G'day. F1 the movie cleans up at the box office on opening weekend. It was the #1 movie in the US and Canada. And a warning, this video is going to make some of you very angry. After the Austrian Grand Prix, and what a bizarre weekend it was out at the track. Fires, crashes, McLaren dominating, and Liam Lawson shining. More about that after we delve into the opening weekend of F1 the movie. The movie's aimed at the US, so let's start there. But first, for those of you who think you are subscribed, could you please check? Because about half you aren't. Thank you in advance for that. The movie did $55 million in the US with some 3,600 screens running the movie. It was Brad Pitt's biggest ever opening weekend. Now I know that a number of you are going to be very angry about the success of this movie. But it is Apple's biggest ever movie release, and they threw big money at it to get those bums on seats. Let's run through some of the stats. Last Thursday, 10 million in the US in previews. More than double that on opening day, Saturday 17, and Sunday $13 million. Now remember, this movie is shot for IMAX, and the IMAX screenings reported about a quarter of the sales in the US and just shy of 20% globally, making it the fourth best movie in IMAX theatres. So on top of the US 55 million, it generated 88 million worldwide. And you'll be interested to know the top markets. Probably not surprised by the UK being the most at 9.2 million, but have a look at China, second and only by a fine margin. I was blown away by that. And could this have any bearing on Cadillac's decision when it comes to picking a driver? Maybe Zhou Guanyu has been given a boost by these stats. Mexico, nearly 7 million. France, just over 5. Australia, 5. Impressive. My country, only 26 million people, and did very well. Korea, 3.7. Germany, 3.4. Japan, about 3. India, 3. And surprisingly, the UAE at 2.7 million. That is a big result for that market. Now, I want to say a big thank you to Bitdefender for sponsoring this video. I've talked about Bitdefender before and how great their cyber software packages are, but today I'm going to talk to you about a new product called Scamio. Scamio is a free service. Yes, you heard right. Just create a Bitdefender account or log in if you already have one. There's no subscription, no contract, and it won't cost you a thing. It's powered by AI and effectively detects scams that may come through by means of email, embedded links, SMS, and even instant messaging. Using Bitdefender's award-winning threat detection algorithms, data analysis, and more, Scamio is brilliant at identifying even the most sophisticated scams. Plus, there's no install needed. Just add it as a contact on Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp, and you can have the ultimate scam detection on your device within minutes. It's so easy. Learn about Bitdefender's Scamio by clicking the link below. A number of you will be saying, but yeah, the movie cost $300 million to produce. Yeah, and it hasn't made that back yet. Of course it hasn't, but it's made back a fair whack of it. Even when you take out the margin for the theatres, it's still a pretty good return on investment for just the opening weekend. If you add those two figures up, 144 million in gross revenue, that equates to around 7 million customers. And I think we can expect many of those non-F1 fans who've gone and seen that movie to become F1 fans very quickly and either watch it on TV or hopefully attend a race. I can't wait for the US ratings for the Austrian Grand Prix because that is the first race after the screening. I think those stats will show a marked jump in the audience in the US. And a couple of you were saying, yes, but wait till somebody who's watched the movie goes and sees a race because often they're boring. Well, the Austrian Grand Prix was anything but boring. Let's take a look at what went on. It all kicked off before the start when one of those overhead signs came crashing down on the track. This flatbed truck was carrying an F2 car, and unfortunately, the crane was sitting too high, hit the overhead track signage, and bang, the whole thing's collapsed on the track. Now, this is one of these signs close up. It's a pretty sturdy structure, but the truck was moving at some speed, and that was no match. Not the first time this has happened. Go back to Baku. George Russell's Williams car was put on the back of a truck, and it proceeded back along the track to the pit lane. Unfortunately, its crane was too high. It cleaned up one of the overhead walkways, resulting in that being unusable. Nobody hurt in either of those incidents, but indeed it was some sort of a worry. I guess the driver of that truck would be pretty embarrassed by the whole thing. That resulted in a big delay on track and the schedule had to be rejigged. So is this bad for Qatar Airways? No, it's quite the reverse. Everyone's talking about it. This is huge exposure. I believe it was an additional sign that was provided free, so there in fact lies a double bonus for the airline. That happened in the middle of the F2 support race. But come race start, the cars left on their formation lap, except Carlos Sainz. He was still stuck here at the back of the grid. Finally got away, parked up at the end of pit lane, but his brakes were hot, real hot. They caught fire. I was on the tower at turn 1 when I realised I had a clean but long view of that incident, and this is what it looked like. Now, new movie fans, don't expect this every race. This is crazy, as was the crash with Kimi and Max. That wasn't Max's fault. Kimi just broke too late and locked up. Max went to Kimi straight after to console him. I thought that was a nice touch. By virtue of Max not being at fault for that incident, he gets 2 points back on his super license. Now he has 3 up his sleeve, so he'd have to do something very wrong in order to lose all 3 in one incident and then be subject to a race ban. And I think you'll find now that Max Verstappen has pretty much resigned himself to the fact that he won't be winning his 5th F1 World Drivers' Championship. The winner of that will be one of these 2 gentlemen who fought it out on track, with Lando securing the win, and that makes the margin just 15 points. A juicy situation heading into his home race at Silverstone this weekend. Let's go post-race. Now I hung around the TV media pen and there were so many stories. Liam Lawson, he fought with Fernando for the whole race. The pair chatted and joked afterwards, and then Liam saw his trainer and bolted past me at speed to see him. They hugged, and then another V-Carb crew member joined in for, I think, the first 3-way hug I've seen in the paddock in a long time. If you go back a day prior, Quali Day, Liam was congratulated by Paul Smith, who's Red Bull's communications manager. Now, the last pic I have of these two was back in Mexico City, and the mood was dramatically different. You'll remember that Sergio and Liam had battled on track, Liam flipping Sergio the bird. Well, Paul had to take him aside after that race for an honest chat. Certainly Liam was on the receiving end of plenty of praise after his 6th place. He was the top Red Bull driver for the weekend. Remember, there are 4 of them across the 2 teams. He did think he'd sustained some damage in that crash, but obviously not, because he lasted the whole race. The other success story for the day, apart from Lando's win, was both Sauber drivers in the points, with Gabriel Bortoleto on the end of plenty of hugs from his manager, his trainer, press officer, and even his teammates' manager. You probably saw that the Austrian Grand Prix had its contract extended until 2041. But why, with so many unsold tickets? I'll get to that in a second. But this is the prettiest track that we race at. Look at this, these stunning views from the top end of the track. There's nothing like it, I promise you. And then you couple that with the fact that fans can get very close to the drivers on the green carpet, which happens on the Sunday race day. Although this year, I'm guessing, maybe 7 or 8 drivers did it. There were 20, so there was a few that got to bypass it, which is a shame. But I understand why. Some of them obviously have commitments. Lewis, in fashion on Saturday only, and he walked through the paddock, which was great for those wanting pictures of him. The other 3 days, well, he was in Ferrari kit. And on those days, he's very hard to find. Now let's go back to those empty stands, in particular the Max Verstappen stand here. I said to one of the crew from the promoter, "You've lost some money on that stand." He said, "No, we got paid in full for that. This is something that's promoted as a Max Verstappen stand." I'm not sure if Max himself buys the tickets and on-sells them, or whether it's another Dutch organisation. But there were a lot of seats empty, as you can see here. They've covered up a quarter of it, and the remaining seats still aren't sold out completely. It was suggested to me by a few people that perhaps the shine of Max is wearing off. He's not winning every race. I guess those people coming from the Netherlands want a great opportunity to see their driver win. And if he's having to battle, perhaps that affects their decision. Let's talk quickly about this picture. Lando Norris was fed a soccer ball to kick around the paddock, and I can't work out why, but he's just quickly allowed it to dribble underneath the Ferrari hospitality suite, and then he's taken off with his press officer, Sophie, and you don't have to be a giant to work out that they thought it was funny. I captured these images of Liam Lawson being denied entry to the paddock on Friday. What was the story? Well, no one could quite work it out, but he was a good couple of minutes standing there trying to persuade the crew to let him in. And quite frankly, most of the time they just walk behind the swipes anyway. They're a driver. Hardly anyone's going to pull them up. But I think that was sorted out later in the day. Let's go to the grid now, and it's an opportunity for us to get quite close to the drivers and celebrities. But I noticed something for the first time, and I've seen Lando Norris line up his car by putting a piece of tape on the fence closest to him, and then he lines something up on the car with that piece of gaffer tape. But Lewis Hamilton does something different. He gets a ruler out, as you can see, a metal ruler, draws a line from where his head would naturally sit at the start, across a point on his car, and then at a point on the track. And then one of his crew puts a small piece of black gaffer tape on the car, such that when he's sitting there ready to go, he's got his car in the perfect spot. And why do they do that? Because they can't see their front wheels and they can't see that front line. And that's why that yellow line sticks out quite a long way from each of the starting boxes. Jumping around all over the place, I know, but Thursday night I shot some pictures out on the track, and then Carlos Sainz and Oliver Bearman rode past me, and I got the bird. from Carlos Sainz. It's not the first time I've been flipped the bird, and it was all in jest, let me make that 100% clear. But let's have a look at other flipping the bird pictures from my history in F1 since 2017, with this being my favourite. We typically don't get too many celebrities at the Austrian Grand Prix, but we did have a movie star, Eric Bana. He's an Australian. In fact, I had a car in a 12-hour race that he did. Of course, I didn't drive the thing. I just put my car in with 3 drivers. And we actually came 6th. Eric was a guest of Mark Webber's, so he was in the McLaren suite and then in the Red Bull suite. But my understanding is the 2 of them are riding motorcycles around, I think, Europe, and doing it via communication with two-way radio as a bit of an adventure. In my Thursday pre-race video, I talked a little bit about Dietrich Mateschitz, who ended up doing some rather good work around this area to pretty it up when he first got hold of this race. I spoke to Dietrich's son Mark at the track on Saturday, and he said it was all part of a project called Project Werk, and people could actually repaint their homes at Dietrich's expense. The thing he said that perhaps they should have stipulated was the colours available, because people were getting all sorts of crazy colours. But I've got to tell you, driving around this area is one of the great joys of Formula One. The roads are glorious, there's mountains on either side of the highways, and there's such a different feeling from just about every other race that we attend. Also on the red carpet, I noticed Ollie Behrman saying to a Red Bull fan with a cap who'd put it forward to be signed, "Sorry, I can't sign Red Bull stuff." I've heard him say he can't sign certain cards, which were those Topps cards, for a reason that you guys pointed out, that probably they have a commercial arrangement with Topps. But it was interesting that he wouldn't sign a Red Bull cap. Look, I've seen the likes of Fernando Alonso saying he won't sign a certain cap. I saw Lewis Hamilton last year, where was it, in Spa. He declined signing a picture of a crash he was involved in and was quite indignant about it, which I think is probably fair. So don't expect a driver to sign everything you thrust under their nose. Now, with that said, I'm heading off to the UK for round 12 of the 2025 season. It's Silverstone, but not before I head out to Jeremy Clarkson's pub to review that. I hope you subscribe so you don't miss any of that content. Thanks for watching, and stay passionate.